Hi, you guys. So I ended up not being able to come on Wednesday because of jury duty. So I am going to do my best to explain all this through this video. However, I can answer any questions when I get back. So you guys have your Skill 18 notes out if you want to follow along with haiku or the paper notes that the sub should have. That is fine too. So we are going to talk about dividing polynomials. So polynomials is what I'm underlining now as an example of a polynomial, and this is another polynomial, it's x plus 6. So a polynomial divided by polynomial is what we're learning how to do today. You guys are going to skip the top parts of your notes. It says dividing polynomials using long division. So you're just going to skip that part, and we're going to start with the synthetic division. So synthetic division is just a method. So before using synthetic division, all polynomials must be in standard form. I'm going to do my best to write with this thing. It's not easy. So all polynomials must be in standard form, and there can be no missing terms. Once again, if this is hard for you guys to see, you can also look at the guided notes that you guys should have. So what we mean by a missing term is, we will talk about that as we go on, but if there's like we can see here our highest power is x to the third. That means there needs to be an x squared, an x, and a constant. So everything below an x to the third. So we're going to start in standard form. So that means my highest one first. So I'm going to go ahead and write this in standard form. Okay, so now that I've written this in standard form, I can see that there are no missing terms. I have an x to the third, an x squared, an x, and a 12. So how I set up synthetic division is I make a column for my x to the thirds, my x squared, my x, and my constant. And then my coefficient in front of my x squared was 2. In front of my x to the third was not 2, 9, negative 16, and 12. Once we have those, I see that I have a coefficient for every one of those terms. Then I want to find my magical number by setting my denominator equal to 0. So that means that when I solve for x, my x equals negative 6. I'm getting better at writing. So that means my magic number is negative 6. And I'm going to write that in my corner. So I bring my first term down. What makes this number magical is the only way to get this negative 2 up above, or this positive 2 back above the line, is multiplied by its negative number. So I'm going to get a negative 12. Then I add down 9 minus 6, or 9 minus 12 is negative 3. I multiply it by the negative 6. I get 18. I add down negative 16 plus 18 is positive 2. Positive 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. Add down is 0. So this tells me my remainder. Guys, this is hard. So my remainder is 0, meaning that x plus 6 divides perfectly into this long thing. So now I need to think about with my 2, negative 3, and 2. So this 2 is originally in the x to the third column. What I end up doing is writing it, it moves down and it gets an x squared. This negative 3 is usually in the x squared column, but it moves down and it gets an x. This 2 was in the x, but it becomes a constant. And since my remainder is 0, all this divides perfectly. So I have no remainder. Kind of some insight as to why this x, this is originally the x to the third, but it goes to x to the squared. If I just looked at this 2x cubed divided by x, so 2x cubed divided by x, I would just end up with a 2x squared. I hope you guys are following along in the notes as well, because this looks awful. So this is synthetic division. We will keep practicing it. Pause the screen if you need to. I'm going to go to the next example. Okay, so you guys have example 4 now. I want to write this in standard form. So I'm going to take a second to write this in standard form. So this is what this ends up looking like in standard form. And my missing term is x squared. So this time I do have a missing term. Then I'm going to set up all my columns x to the fourth and everything down. I write CON for constant. My coefficient in front of my x to the fourth is actually a 1, negative 2, 0, 3, and 1. If I set this equal to 0, I find my magical number. So my magical number is when x equals 3. So then I like writing that over here. And then I draw my line. That's really aggressively far down. And I bring down my 1. Multiply it by 3, I get 3. I add down, I get 1. Multiply it by 3, I get 3. Add down, I get 3. 9. I'm adding down each time. I get 12. Multiply by 3, I get 36. Add down, I get 37. So this is my remainder. I can't write remainder. I'm just going to write R. And now my 1 is originally in the x to the fourth, but it's now gets an x to the third. This one was in the x to the third, but it gets an x squared. This 3 gets just an x. This 12 is our constant, and this 37, it's a remainder, so it's 37 divided by x minus 3. Let's go ahead and pause this if you need to hear that or have other questions. I'm going to go ahead and start number 5. Okay, so I rewrote my example 5 in standard form. Now I'm going to make my little columns x squared, x, and my constant. My x squared is a 4, a negative 12, and a 9. If I set this equal to 0, my magic number is a -1/2. Guys, I'm trying so hard to write this well. Ooh. Then I start my, this becomes a 4 times -1/2 is -2. Add down -14 times 1/2 is +7. End up with 16. This is my remainder. I just can't write remainder, so I'm just going to do the R. What I do with this is this becomes 4 is an x squared. It now becomes an x. Our 14 was a x, and now it's a constant, and then our remainder just gets added and becomes divided by our original factor or polynomial we're dividing by. Just pause this if you have any questions. I'm going on to the next example. So I put example 5 in standard form. So go ahead and do that. Copy this if you need to, or pause this if you need to. Now I'm going to set up all my terms. So I have r to the 4th all the way down to my constant. Once again, pause this as you need to. Follow the notes. I understand this looks rough. And then my constant in front of my r squared, r to the 5th is really 1. If I set this equal to 0, my magical number is -5. So I'm going to draw my line, bring my 1 down. The only way to get it back over is multiply it by -5, add down, add, I get 0. 0 times -5 is 0, 0, 0, 0. -5 times -5 is 25. Add down -9. +45. Add down +10. So this is my here, once again, is my remainder. So this 1 gets an r to the 4th. This -5 gets an r. This 9 is a constant. And this 10 gets divided by our divisor, what we divided by. I'm going to go ahead and put up 2 whiteboard problems. Please pause and work on those whiteboard problems. And then the next slide will have the answer. So these are the 2 whiteboard problems. Please pause this. The next 2 slides will have the answers. So this is the answer to the whiteboard problems. If you would like to pause and check these, go ahead and pause and check these. So this is not in your notes, but we're going to go ahead and talk about this because it'll help us with the next section. If I gave you a 36 divided by, if I told you one of the factors of 36 is 6, you would say the other is 5, because 36 divided by 6 equals 5. If I told you one of the factors of 30 was 10, you would tell me the other one was a 3, because 10 divided by 30 is 3. If one of the factors of 30 is 2, you would tell me the other is 15. So if we're given a factor, we can divide to figure out what the other factor is. So we are given 30. If we divide by the one factor we know, we find the unknown factor. This is what the next section is about.